It's been a while.
Hey,
Got a few more popping in here. So just started recording on this. So this is the Ortelius architecture for the Australian time zone on April 22nd. We kind of did one back to back. Brad and I and a few others did one last week. We decided just to do a catch up so you could, Brad could invite more folks from your side. So welcome. I'm Steve Taylor. I'm from Deploy Hub, one of the main contributors to the Ortelius project. Welcome aboard, everybody. We really appreciate your interest in our open source project. And so I just kind of like to throw out there some ideas around the architecture side. So some of the things that we're looking at doing from the architecture standpoint is we currently have a service catalog project going on. So we're collecting some more service catalog data around microservices and containers. So if you think about if you have a microservice, you want to know what the developer Slack channel is, so you can start having a chat with them over their channel, stuff like that. We're also diving into the dependencies that are inside of a container image. So like, what are all the Python modules that are being consumed by the image? We're going to do the same for Go and probably Node.js and Java. The Java one's a little bit on the edge, but definitely Node.js and Go as part of that project. And part of that that scanning for the service catalog is finding all the licenses and all the CVEs that are in a baked into the image at that level. And then some new stuff that we have on the horizon is addressing how Ortelius can fit into the GitOps world. So how many of you are kind of familiar with GitOps, or if you're GitOps pros? Okay, cool.
We're familiar with it. We're not by all means pros, but it's a big interest to us, and it's something we want to do going forward.
Okay, because one of the projects that seems to be popping up or gaining some traffic is Argo CD off of the CNCF side. A lot of people seem to be adopting that as the go-to open source solution around GitOps, even though that the Weaveworks FluxD has been out there longer. For some reason, people are on the Argo bandwagon at this point. The one out of looking at the GitOps solutions, the one I like is one by Rancher called Fleet. I think it's a little bit easier to understand and utilize. So one of the things that we're thinking of, instead of kind of sticking you in the middle of a ongoing development project around the service catalog, would be to have your group focus on what we can do around GitOps and how we can take the data that Ortelius has and drive the GitOps process around that. So because right now Ortelius has a deployment engine, and it can do deployments of files, regular like jar files, EAR files, those type of things, HTML files using Ansible under the covers to sync from a file repository over to your endpoint. The other part is for containers going out to Kubernetes. We interface with Helm at that level. So we like that because the Helm charts allow us to separate the data from the definition. And so what happens on the Helm side is we create an overrides values file for the driving the Helm part, because Ortelius has all this data about your environment, your endpoints, so we can really separate what's happening as you move through the pipeline, and we just apply different data to those Helm charts over and over. Now I gotta go close the door because the dog opened it. Hang on. I'll freeze. So so that's kind of where we have the Helm charts fitting in as part of the deployment process with the override files. Now on the GitOps side, it gets a little more interesting, because GitOps is focused around taking like your deployment YAMLs, your service YAMLs, secrets and those type of things, and throwing them all into one big repository. Now that works fine for, simple, what I would call monolithic containers, where somebody took their Java application in Tomcat and containerized it and pushed it out to a Kubernetes cluster. So it's not really a microservice architecture. It's just one big container image running. So things like the GitOps works really easy for that, because you're managing a small number of deployment YAMLs in the Git repo. Now, when we look at microservices, what we're seeing is about 8 months ago, people were at like 25 microservices. Most people that we're talking to now are at the 100 to 200 range of microservices. So the challenge I'm going to throw out to your group there, Brad, is how can we utilize the data that we have in Ortelius and be able to take that data that we have about the 100 to 200 microservices and drive a GitOps process from that level. So, and a lot of it's going to get down into, because what ends up happening is we end up having lots and lots of files. So if you have like some of our customers, they have 17 QA environments.
Wow.
Plus all your development environments, plus your production environment, not to mention all if you have multiple clusters in every single environment, the scale, just, the number of files that you're dealing with and those pieces kind of gets out of hand, gets unwieldy really quick. So because Ortelius has this data that we can apply to the YAML files, we can actually start doing updates from Ortelius into the Git repo. So some of it is like, if it's a Helm chart, it's pretty simple. We take our Helm charts and we take the overrides file, create that, and we let the GitOps operator use that overrides file plus the Helm chart to do its update. Now, if it's something like where they're using just straight deployment files or straight service files for the definition, and then we're going to have a lot more of these files that we have to kind of like reverse engineer, go and substitute the data that we have, and then reapply it to the Git repo as part of that process. So some of this is going to be research. I would say probably 50-50, where we're going to need your group to do some research around like Flux, around Argo, around Fleet, and whatever the other GitOps operators are out there. There is a GitOps working group that's coming out of the CNCF. They meet only once a month. So, but there is that resource. They're starting to produce some documents. I don't know if they're trying to standardize how GitOps is structured, or if they're really focused on just trying to put all their thoughts in one place. I don't know if they're going to come out with like a standards group or standards document on how GitOps is supposed to work, but that's going to be some of the research that you'll need to look at from your side. So does this make sense for any interest for what you would
Yeah,
be
well,
working on? Good to work on?
it's actually something that we're coming up to personally anyway. You know, starting to look at Argo and Kubernetes. So we've you know, on our journey, we've got our ingress. So you know, our next step really is the CD. So it's perfect timing actually.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And as far as like the CI/CD pipeline, from what I could tell, it around the GitOps world, it doesn't seem to matter what the CI/CD tool is. And it may be worthwhile to look at some of the CI/CD tools, how they're interacting with GitOps, because we may be able to use their solution from the Ortelius side. There may be like a Jenkins plugin to say, okay, we just did this Docker build. Now we need to go ahead and update the deployment YAML with the new image ID, for example. There may be a plugin in Jenkins that does that work for us, that we could adopt their methodology at that practice. I think CodeFresh is doing some work around Argo. I think there's a demo out there where it shows CodeFresh and Argo kind of mirrored together. So that's kind of the thought process that I have right now about what we're trying to achieve.
And when we're talking about Git repos, is this a specific Git repo for the customer, or it's the Ortelius?
It would be the so let's say it would be the customer's Git repo.
Customer,
So
okay,
yeah. So let's say I want to deploy my application out to my QA environment. What ends up happening in the Git repo on the GitOps side is, I believe it's called an environment repository, which you go and toss all your deployment YAMLs, your service YAMLs, your ingress, all those different Kubernetes manifest files into that environment repo. And then on the other side, you have your Kubernetes cluster, which has the Argo, which has the GitOps operator, like Argo or Flux running in it. And then that's configured to go look at that repo for updates. So whenever that repository is that contains all the manifests is updated, it basically wakes up and says, oh, I have to go figure out if I have work to do to go update this cluster that I'm running in.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. I know Flux is very easy for that, but like you said, everyone's going to Argo. It's really good to. Well, we'll try all of them and report back the research.
Yeah, and some like Argo just came out with they just had a release and they're calling it an application control plane or application sets. Basically, they're running into a problem with the number of files that they were needing to manage in the environment repository. So these environment repositories live, you know, they're just like your source code repository, but they contain all the deployment manifests. So that's where that repository lives. It's like just another repository that the developers are going to go and update. That brings up another point is I don't know who's updating these. If the developers are creating these, the deployment YAMLs, or if it is operations. So, or if it's like an SRE that's doing that work to do the updates. So I really don't know who's actually doing the updates to the files, you know, or if it's automated, like we were talking about Jenkins. But Ortelius has all this metadata that we can that we're pulling out of the build cycle, and that we can then overlay on top of those the manifests and really drive the process very cleanly.
Yeah, and when let's talk about the files again. So I believe you said they're jar files, HTML files, a mixture of files. Do you use or the customer use an artifact repository like Artifactory or Nexus, or
Yeah,
is
so
that where they're living?
so in the GitOps world, most of it is focused around Kubernetes. So we're not going to be dealing with like a jar file deployment into a WebSphere cluster or something like that. It's going to be taking a Docker image and moving it out to a Kubernetes cluster.
Nice.
So it'll
Okay.
be just focused around Kubernetes and Docker images.
Makes it easy.
Oh, I have a question. So
Yeah.
generally for repositories, what is the flavor that y'all are using? Is it GitHub? Is it GitLab? And are any of your customers using the tools from those particular companies itself, like GitHub Actions, or GitLab has their own CI/CD?
Yeah, so both GitLab and GitHub, and sometimes you'll see Bitbucket show up as part of that. But what ends up happening is on the CI part, when you check in your code, you're going to go ahead and create. So think of each microservice is going to have its own Git repo. So if I have 100 microservices, I'm going to have 100 Git repos. Now I'll have one additional, the 101, that last repository will be the repository that contains all the deployment manifests files for Kubernetes.
Yeah.
So that's where they kind of bring together all the microservices into one place that they're going to deploy from. And in that, because what the goal of GitOps is to be able to have a recording or like an immutable place for all changes to come from.
Okay.
So that's where that environment repository is going to be what, lack of a better word, the single source of truth for the manifest files. Now, the tricky part is when we talk about 100 microservices, if you just look at the service and the deployment files, if you separate them out, you have 200 files then in that repo just for one deployment. Now, if you have four environments, you have a dev environment, you have a test environment, you have a UAT, and then production. Now you got 4 copies of that. So you have 800 files that you're managing at this level. So, and that's just a simple case. And that's where the GitOps world is. I don't think they see it yet, the scaling problem that they're going to have. And I think they're doing some tricks to minimize number of files and kind of try to reuse some of that stuff, so you don't have to reinvent or recreate everything for every single stage of the life cycle, for example. So they're doing some, I think, some tricks around that front, and that's where we have to see how they're doing it and what we can do from the Ortelius side to go ahead and, if they're creating like a template and then they have values that they're going to apply to the template that we can, I think it was Argo was going a templating route at that level. So this whole world where we can apply values to a template would fit in perfectly with the Ortelius model as part of that. So we just got to do some detective work on that front.
Sure.
Sure. Okay.
And the what will happen is after we get the research done, then we'll go ahead and the service catalog project should be wrapped up, and we'll be able to start coding things, and we'll throw some code your way.
Yep. And do you see this initial research being a white paper?
That probably is a pretty good idea, to a white paper or even some high-level design docs, on the recommendation of how we should approach this.
And what would you call it? Just what would we call this document?
The document name would be, I would almost go the route of saying automating GitOps with Ortelius.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good to me.
And there's a whole piece of the puzzle, and this where it'll kind of come into your question a minute, where who is the Git provider? Because when we get in, part of the GitOps process is to deal with PRs. And so in the GitHub world, they're called PRs. I believe in the GitLab world, they're called merge requests.
Yeah.
So there's going to be an automation layer that we may need to interface with, depending on who the provider is of the Git repo.
Yeah.
So, you know, and whether we're going to be using actions or if we're going to be using RESTful API calls or, you know, those type of things, we'll have to kind of look at.
I like the idea of the REST API or any sort of API, because then you can any of the actions you just call that API anyway. So you have like an interface where it's always going to be the same, and you don't have to develop something that's, let's say for example, you do GitHub Actions, and then okay, now I need a Jenkins plugin, now I need Bitbucket pipeline, and if we have the REST API, it just we will adapt those tools around to suit our framework, which seems like a better way to go.
Yep, exactly. Totally agree. So we'll have to kind of identify so that's kind of like the second part of it, is identifying the process that people are utilizing. You know, are they, like, especially like on the Jenkins side, you know, are people doing the Docker build, and then they have like a Jenkins plugin step that updates the deployment YAML with the new image ID, and then do they go ahead and call a GitHub action to create a pull request automatically, and then do they automatically approve and merge the pull requests, all based on a Jenkins pipeline?
Yeah,
you know,
Emmett's done a little bit of work around that with like the commit SHA that will be tagged as the container and the deployment environment. He does that with Helm, don't you, Emmett? So
yeah,
you might have some good ideas around that.
Yeah, so currently we basically do all of that using Helm and Helm file, so that is our simplification, since we don't currently use Argo. So
right.
Helm file syncs all the respective Helm charts at one shot, verifying based on what was the previous file version and what's the current file version.
Right.
So things like that.
Yeah, when you look at something like Helm and the way Helm templates and separates the data from the definition, it's an easy solution to deal with. But if you're not using like a Helm, and you're just doing these files, straight deployment files, and that's where I'm not quite sure, like on the Argo I know Argo can run Helm as part of it, but I don't know if that's like a requirement, or if that's the way most people are going, or if they're just writing pure YAML files and dealing with maybe an Argo templating mechanism. That's kind of the unknowns around the GitOps side.
So one of the things,
sorry, you go.
So one of the things we currently do is we use, so even in Helm, you can use Go templating. In order to simplify the whole thing, and we would write functions on the background for some of them. So probably one thing we can do is consolidate all those functions, so you have that one single function for all your respective repositories, similar to your environments repository, and using that repository's functions, then you evaluate all the Helm files for your respective applications. But I think that will come at a later point. I'll dig into Argo as well for a POC.
Yeah.
And see how it can fit into my current client. Based on that, I'll be able to write it back to how it would fit into Ortelius as well.
Perfect. Because we have all this data. I mean, we, just think of service catalog and what's coming out of the build and where things have gone and what versions are where. We keep track of all that on all those relationships. So we have all tons and tons of information that we can utilize in the GitOps solution. So if it's not there, we can grab it from somewhere.
Absolutely.
And in terms of, I know we don't know too much about the architecture of Ortelius yet, but once you did sort of come up with a solution, would this, how would you tie that back into the Ortelius architecture? Like, I know that's a very rough question and we don't know yet, but.
Right. So what we would need, once we figure out what people are doing and how the GitOps operators are structured. So let's say we're gonna, we'll just stick with Argo. We know that Argo has a set of, we're going to go ahead and update a deployment YAML file with like the image tag. Let's just keep it simple. That we may then, like you said, Amit, do some Go templating to go ahead and some Go programs to go ahead and do that. And what we would do then is from the Ortelius side, when you would go to deploy or from the Ortelius side, instead of deploying through Helm, we would actually go ahead and interface it to that Go program to go ahead and update the deployment YAML. And then the next step would be probably to do more than likely create a pull request on the fly and then get it to a place where people can look at it from a PR perspective to approve and then merge and let the GitOps operator do all the work from there on out.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of what I'm thinking.
Yep.
And then there's one, like I know on most of these, there's a kind of back end part of it. So let's say we go ahead and do all that automation I just talked about. There's a PR out there. It sits out there for a week. So we actually got it staged, ready to go. But somebody's waiting to approve it and do the merge. That will actually need another hook coming back from the GitOps operator saying that it completed that task. So we'll have to catch a notification coming back so we can record that what we thought that with this image tag name that we just updated actually did go to where we thought it was going to, and it got completed, so we can record that relationship.
And you do that like an event based, or it's an API, or?
When I was looking at Argo, they had what they called a notification entry point. So okay. Let's say you wanted to, and the example is around Slack. So after Argo updated the cluster, you could send a Slack notification to say that this cluster is now up to date with in sync with the Git repo. That entry point is what we could use to throw an event over to Ortelius.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, that sounds quite cool, actually.
So, a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to research first because there's a lot of research.
Yeah.
So, if you guys are up for it, it would be awesome for you guys to take this on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm definitely up for it. Like I said, it ties in very well with. I want to do this anyway, so what better way to do it with open source project?
Perfect.
Yeah. How about Tim? You're in?
Yeah, absolutely. It was something we were discussing before as well for Argo.
Yeah.
So I would also probably add in Flagger because it's apparently this new CI/CD tool which is incubating from CNCF, but I've never heard of it before.
There's a bunch out there, you know, and some of it is some of the CI/CD tools. I think parts of them are going to go away, like on the if you look at the front end process of like a Jenkins pipeline, you know, where you're doing the build and you're doing like a unit test, and then maybe you're going to do a deployment to development, that'll all be just collapsed into like a GitHub action or a Google Cloud build, where you're actually doing all that work at the Docker build time. So you actually, when you're doing in the multi-layer Docker build, you actually would be running your unit tests in that before you even say that the image is good to go. You know, you can go and actually run some string tests or unit tests at that level. So the pipelines are going to get smaller, but also at the same time they're going to get I think they're going to get more towards an event-based system, where you can plug and play events into the whole pipeline process as well. So Kepton is one of those event-based CI tools, and it looks like the CDF is moving forward with an events-based SIG to kind of tie together these different orchestration CI/CD tools through throwing events around. So it's going to be evolving here pretty quick, I think, around the pipeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we'll get a few more new ones popping out too.
I've just been updating the Google Doc on the meeting minutes, etc. In terms of, I was looking through the GitHub as well. We don't seem to have a issue for GitOps.
I have not created one yet. I wanted to make sure you're on board, and we'll go ahead and, if you want to go ahead and create one on, feel free. If not, I'll create one tomorrow.
Yeah, I can create one today. That's fine.
Awesome.
Okay.
And then if you're not part of the Ortelius Google groups, please join that, because it gives you access to all the documents, all the events, and all that stuff. So it's just ortelius-dev@googlegroups.com is the email address. I think most of you are probably going to be on there. But that is how we control the security. And then on the GitHub repo side, if you could make a pull request against the README in the Ortelius/Ortelius repo, just add your name in one of the sections. You'll see like different sections. And Brad, if you want to put in a GitOps section in that README, when you do the PR on that, allows me to pick up your GitHub handle and set up the GitHub security from there.
Sure. Yeah, I'm already done a PR to the repo, but I'm happy to put the GitHub in there as well. The GitOps, sorry.
Yeah, and then that way we can I can make sure when we get to the next phase of like coding and things like that, you're in the right teams and all that, and all the GitHub security is all set up. It's an extra step, but it's weird. I can't assign issues or anything like that to people that are not that have never done a pull request against the repo. They just don't show up. So that's how come we have to go through this little hoop.
Okay, cool. And then are we I feel like we're sort of wrapped up for GitOps for now. Did anyone have any other questions or comments regarding it?
The only other thing I have is the next meeting, which I think we have a week from today, but let me double check it. I think I put a repeating meeting out there. Yes. So a week from today would be our next architecture meeting again. So next Thursday, we will have the architecture meeting at 8:30 my time. And then we'll do 4:30 my time, which is the one we just did today. So next Thursday, we'll have, I'll do two meetings, one for the States and one for you folks that fits better into your time slot. And then you'll be
Sure.
on the same cadence every 2 weeks from there, going out forward, if that works for you.
Yeah, two weeks is a good cadence because we all have jobs as well. So I feel like 2 weeks we can achieve something. Yeah.
Yeah, I know how you feel.
And I was gonna, well, we've got Tim on the line as well. So Tim and I have done a lot of chat ops in the past. So I thought, I know that that's parked at the moment, but I thought maybe if we do have, we've got 20 minutes left, maybe we want to talk just briefly on chat ops and just to put in the back of our heads, maybe what's going to happen, in the future regarding chat ops.
Yeah, so my thought on that is, well, there's a couple pieces of functionality around Ortelius and chat ops. One is this the obvious one, which is starting out, kicking off a deployment at that level. So I want to deploy this version of this application to this environment. Pretty simple. There's RESTful APIs on the Ortelius side that already exist that you can hook up against at that level to do that type of deployment. The other thing would be to do queries about what is, go and give me all the details about this microservice that's running in production. So go give me the service catalog details from that standpoint. So that's kind of what was give me the differences between one deployment and the next deployment. So there's things around more what you would think from a operations point of view. I need to do some investigation work. Can I start throwing some questions at a chat ops, at a Slack channel and have the bot return me some information that I can start doing my investigation with from there going forward. So those are kind of two worlds I'm seeing on the chat ops side.
Mm-hmm. And so they can use, okay, and that would just essentially be a Docker container, and then they just leverage. That would just
Yeah. So there's a bunch of RESTful APIs out there to go retrieve information from Ortelius. So it was just going to be a matter of what information we want to bring back and interact with from the chat op side. And then from there, we'll make sure the APIs are available. So there'll be some coding to pretty up the data when it comes back from raw JSON.
Yeah, and Tim, are you interested in GitOps or do you want to stick at ChatOps? Like, what are your thoughts? Or even if you have time to any?
I'm definitely interested in both.
Yeah.
I guess the ChatOps one, we would need to better understand the deployment architecture for Ortelius. How does it commonly get deployed? Where are bits and pieces going to fit in with the model that we already have in place? But I understand from what you're saying that that's currently parked a lower priority. So given that, yeah, sure, we can progress the discussions in the background. But it sounds like GitOps is the primary focus at this point in time, and that's fair enough.
Cool.
And I think from a getting to know Ortelius, that starting with the GitOps, you'll get a better flavor for Ortelius overall and the different pieces of it. And then from there, the chat ops will go a lot easier to basically build out the language set that we're going to be using on the chat op side.
Sure.
I guess the other comment, just given the use cases you described, it's potentially a scenario that some of the chat ops functionality would effectively be leveraging or may even be replaced by some of the GitOps. Like if you've got an automated deployment, I guess there could be a chatops command, for argument's sake, to revert to a prior version, for argument's sake. But again, that's going to potentially be leveraging under the covers GitOps functionality to revert a commit, which would then trigger the GitOps procedure and so on.
Exactly. So the goal would be to simplify the whole GitOps process through Ortelius. So like you said, if you want to revert, you want to go backwards to a commit, or if you want to go back a couple commits, that through the chat ops and Ortelius, you can get to that point fairly easy without having to jump through a bunch of hoops on the Git side.
Just writing all these notes down. I'm not being rude. Okay. Cool. I think that's pretty much summarizes. Yeah, it's a good understanding of what we want this group to be doing. So I'll also join the CNCF working group for the GitOps as well, just to see what they're up to. Maybe we can leverage some of their work too.
Yeah, last time I was on one of their meetings, it was at 11 a.m. or like noon Mountain Time, which would put it at a god awful hour for you.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's
like,
the only one that does it for any time is the SIG security, but we don't need that just at the moment. But
right.
I can reach out to them and maybe ask them. Okay. And then in terms of the white paper, well, if we do a white paper or architecture diagram, do you have a specific, do you want to make that template and add us as a contributor so that it's all under your name, or do you want us to do it then pass it to you? How do you want to do that?
It doesn't matter to me. If just let me know what you need. If you want your own repo to put like readmes and markdowns in there, we can go that route. We could do it off of the existing documentation. All of the user guide and contributor guide are all markdowns that run underneath a Hugo server. So they're served up that way. So we can actually start out in your own, if we want to do a GitOps repo where we can put all the documentation and that pieces. And then when you're ready, we can fold it into the documentation repo. Whatever works the best for you, just let me know and we'll get it set up for you.
Yeah, I think personally, I would like it just a GitHub repo. I think it's the easiest. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes more sense, right?
Okay.
Okay. I'll just put that as the action item for you.
Yeah.
Steve,
And I just, like I said, I need you to
yeah,
do a PR so I can get your handles underneath the organization.
Have you done that yet, Emma and Tim?
Yeah.
No, but I'll do it today.
Okay.
And if you could put your handles in or throw them at me through Discord, either way, then I'll make sure that I get everything associated with the right repo.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because we have
sorry.
And what I may do, Brad, is just make you an administrator at the organizational level.
Sure.
Let me just do that real quick. And then that way you can, if anything comes up, then it's like middle of the night for me that you can.
Yep, sounds good.
I just can't remember. It's not one of the things I do every day. There it is. Nope. Now, of course, I can never find it when I want it. some reason I can't find it, but I'll get you set up so you're that admin at the organization level. So you'll be able to create repos and manage teams and stuff like that.
Yep. And just for the other two people on the call, James and Fireflies.ai, we're about to use at the moment.
So James actually is in the States with me in Albuquerque.
Okay.
So he's with our side.
Okay. Hey, James. Oh, I was on mute. Oh, no.
James, you're not working this wave.
Yeah, okay.
You're crazy looking. You got something weird going on with your bandwidth.
Cool. Okay.
And I can't remember who Fireflies is. I know you.
It says fireflies.ai note taker Saksham. Sure.
I think I know him. Yeah, it's just for the minutes, really, just to put the names on. I'll just put Fireflies.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, that works. Okay. And then, in terms, do you have any questions for Steve regarding Ortelius, or maybe a bit of a background to it, or any?
Not particularly.
Motivational
I guess it's more discussion for us offline in terms of how we're going to structure this to move it forward.
Sure.
We can deal with that down the track.
Cool. Okay. So those are just the minutes that I put in the Google Doc. I just put them in the chat for someone else to see it.
Sweet.
So in summary, we have 3 action items. I joined the CNCF. Well, we all should really join that group. I'll create a GitOps issue in GitHub, and then we'll set up the repo for the GitOps documentation and etc. And then we'll meet back next Friday, same time.
Yeah, exactly. Next Friday, same time.
Yeah. And then after that will be the 2-week cadence instead of 1 week.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, we can probably get 10 minutes back of our day. And
Sounds good.
it's probably beer time for you, Steve.
It's only just winding down for the day, so it's 5:20. It's not late at all, so don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks very much for giving us a friendly time as well. We appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thank you all for your interest in Ortelius, and I think you're going to have some fun with this project.
Yeah, it's very exciting. We'll be able to get a blog going from it, and we can hit a few birds with the same stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
See you
you.
next week.
Thanks everyone.
Take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye.